Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is the March 7th, 2024 edition of the KubeStellar Community Meeting. If you don't want to be on video and you don't want to be recorded, now's the time to leave the call. We are recording this and we'll be posting it on our YouTube channel. Please mute yourself or turn off your camera if you wish not to be recorded. Okay, so we are a proud member of the Cloud Native Compute Foundation's Sandbox initiative. And as such, we are inclusive and we have a contributor code of conduct. As contributors and maintainers in the CNCF community and in interest of fostering an open and welcoming community, we pledge to respect all people who contribute through reporting issues, posting feature requests, updating documentation, submitting pull requests or patches, and other activities. We are committed to making participation in the CNCF community a harassment-free experience for everyone, regardless of level of experience, gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, disability, personal appearance, body size, race, ethnicity, age, religion, or nationality. Essentially what that means is please just be nice to each other. Okay, today we have an agenda posted. If you would like to follow along or put your name on the attendees list, please go to kubestellar.io/join us, either separated by an underscore or not. And that will get you redirected to a Google mailing list, and you can join that list, and then you will receive regularly recurring invites for this meeting, as well as access to this document and other documents in our public domain. Okay, I see a few people logging in and joining the attendee list. Thank you very much. Okay, you can find the recording for this meeting on kubestellar.io/TV. Of course, if you're already watching it, that point is mute. Okay, so up first we have the latest KubeStellar architecture developments. So I believe we had a release for 0.20. I've been using it a bit, making some good progress, and it's in the right direction. We now have 0.21 on its way for pluggable transport. Do we have any updates on pluggable transport and release 0.21? Okay.
We're missing both Ezra and Neil to talk about that.
Yep. Okay, I guess they're not joining today. All right, so release at the end of March. Anybody have any comments or updates regarding that? I think there's a documentation site refactor that's going to take place this month, and new features are being identified, but there's a freeze because of the current bug queue backlog. Any updates or mentions or items you'd like to update us on the release on the end of March?
I can quickly talk about the plan we discussed earlier on, right? So it's right now we are working to have this 0.21.0, right? That will include the pluggable transport as part of the code, and then most of the work in March will be really to work on the documentation, to basically revamp the site, to make sure we close a number of bugs that we have right now before adding new features. And that's pretty much the plan. We're probably not gonna add the new features until we basically work out all the bugs. And that will probably pave the way for the release at the end of the month. That's pretty much the current plan that we discussed.
Okay, thank you. Is there any more information about cross repo dependency that we need to cover, or can this be removed?
I think that for now we kind of worked out a solution for that.
I thought so too.
But yeah, we probably for now I don't think it's most of the people that we really involved in the discussion is not here, so I don't think it's probably the best place. But I think we have worked out for now a solution to go ahead with that.
Okay. Yeah, I pointed out last time, but I'll just recapitulate it. It's some of the error messages that I'm seeing coming out of clusteradm and other places that are OCM related could use a bit of a scrub. there is some grammatical issues that could be worked out. And so would be nice at some point, I think, to address that. All right. Testing. Anybody on here that can speak to the testing, unit testing? I know that there's been a push towards working towards Ginkgo, which can do tests in parallel, and more of a reliance on this framework instead of the Bash testing that we were doing in the GitHub Actions. Anybody have any updates or information around that?
Yeah, just to clarify, we are switching from the current end-to-end tests are all written in Bash, but we found that Ginkgo has more capabilities. It can do parallel runs. It can report better on status. In general, the test, it gives more information on what natural to sort of write, at least for mass contributors, this testing in Ginkgo. But just want to clarify, for now, this is mainly, Ginkgo is mainly for the end-to-end testing, right? Our unit testing is still not using that. It's just using the Go test kind of plumbing. It's not right now using Ginkgo for that. That's a possibility for the future. We had a brief discussion about that, but for now, it's mainly for the end-to-end testing.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Anything on integration testing we can comment on here?
Yeah, this is the part Mike has been working on to write an integration test. Essentially, what it does is bring up a kind of embedded API server with embedded etcd. So it's a very lightweight kind of API server that can be used for testing. And with that, it can run some of the integration tests of the controller. And the idea is to put a lot of stress. So you can run parallel testing and basically create a bunch of objects in parallel, delete them, trash them, and basically trying to catch potential race conditions with that. That's really one of the main goals of this work. And that's something also that should run as part of the CICD testing that we are doing. It's not a complete end-to-end testing. We've been doing also end-to-end testing for performance, scalability. That's the work Braulio has been working on. But at least he exercised one particular part of the system that is really the binding controller, and try to put a lot of stress on that. We had similar kind of testing now. We haven't really completely automated or integrated for the status controller, where we also were able to identify some race conditions, and that have been fixed. We're still validating that, but pretty much that has been fixed. But in general, this testing is very useful to identify potential kind of race conditions.
Okay. And Braulio, what are the plans now for, I see you're on the call. What are the plans for incorporating the performance testing work that you've been doing?
So I think I'm now designing the test for the long to do some long direction experiment per se. So that we can yes test and have source leak in the environment, and so that's the testing plan to incorporate on our testing tools for KubeStellar per se.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. All right. This is yeah, it's nice to see this maturing is showing a real step up in terms of level of maturity for the project. So good job. Okay, any comments here on decoupling of KubeFlex and KubeStellar?
Okay, so we discussed that. That is mainly about the way we deploy the KubeStellar controller, right? Today, we still have this dependency on KubeFlex. For now, we decide to kind of postpone because there is a larger discussion about the value in a way that we get when we run with KubeFlex versus running without KubeFlex, right? We know that today KubeFlex is providing these denatured spaces. So in many scenarios where you really want to deliver workloads, right, you still need to have this kind of denatured space. Right now we don't have an alternative solution, right? So maybe as time move on and maybe other type of technology come up to build this kind of denatured API server, that could be something we can examine. But for now, I think we probably want to decouple more in the sense that the way we do deployment, maybe we can sort of decouple a little more some of the components. For example, the transport, Nir has been doing some work to sort of add some kind of layer to basically interact with KubeFlex in a kind of pluggable way. So that's something probably we're gonna do maybe after the release at the end of the month. But for now, I don't expect we're gonna completely, run KubeStellar without KubeFlex at all. I mean, that's something actually we can evaluate. There are scenarios where maybe some user doesn't care about the denaturing aspect, and I think it's some probably of the scenario that you are also looking into, Andy, when we talk about KubeFlow pipelines, maybe.
Yeah.
Just deliver the pipeline runs and stuff like that. And that's something probably a scenario where maybe useful, right? Because you don't need to install additional stuff. You just run pretty much the controller. So those are scenarios I think we should evaluate and discuss more, right? Can we, again, it's not really a huge piece of work. It's more about how we somehow start the controller, right? How we bootstrap the controller in a way that is somehow easy for the user from the point of view of user experience. You don't have to do a lot of configuration step before actually you deploy, right? That's pretty much what we are discussing right now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this the ability to just deploy to the hosted control plane removes in some cases, in those cases where there are already projects or solutions that you're deploying that already have a good, I guess, hub and spoke model, and it's not really a good idea to get in the middle of that to make it. But for those that don't have a hub and spoke model in their solution for the ability to transfer work from one place to another to get it done, then I think the traditional way that we used to use it, it works well. But yeah, there are all types of options there. You gotta just wrap your head around it and make it simple for other people to understand it. I think that's the challenge I see ahead. But yeah.
And part of this, maybe this is our orthogonal problem, but we saw also from Kevin was experimenting with running on small device like Raspberry Pi and so on. So those are scenarios where we should probably consider how we run, with less overhead, right? We consume less memory and we are more efficient. So those, I think we can come up with different options for configuration, like for example, not running vCluster to run OCM and or maybe, things like that. Those are all options that we should be able to explore and consider.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Very good. Helm, Franco, I know I've been hearing some rumblings from you on this. Where are we at?
So, sorry, what I can the M chart. So I submitted actually a PR for the KubeFlex subrepo 222, PR 222, which is a pretty large PR. It's a rework of KubeFlex chart to enable a couple of things. One, to fix one issue, which is the CRD installation. Now it's cleaner and guaranteed to work before the rest of the chart is installed. And two features, which are the automatic installation of post-create hooks. We have three options right now: a KubeStellar hook, a OCM hook, and an OCM with status add-on hook. And these can be controlled just using values in the chart. The second feature, which is related to this, is to allow the automatic creation during the chart installation of a user-defined list of control planes of different types and or user-defined type and with user-defined post create hooks. So there is again a value-based mechanism to pass to the chart where you can list the control planes that you want with their specific type, obviously the type that are supported, right? And specific post create hooks that you want to run. Now, the version of the post create hooks container is also brought out to the values, so it can be decoupled from loopback to other repos, and it's open on KubeFlex, and was waiting for a review to see if it's a good idea, to see if there are issues. I also provided an update to the documentation that explains how to use it.
Okay. All right, good. Yeah, I hope to use it at some point in the stacker automation that I'm working on. So eventually I'd like to start using it, but I'm giving it some time for you to work things out. All right, thank you for the update.
You're welcome.
All right, next up. So I can talk about interns for open source. So I've been working with a couple of different universities and working with others in the community with trying to cultivate and determine if there's other universities that would be interested in this. There's apparently some affinity between universities and open source projects that allow professors and grad students to collaborate, even undergrad students to collaborate in the open to make a valid contribution in return for credit and completing a degree. So recognizing this, I've been kind of double clicking on it, looking at attracting independent study candidates or semesterly enrolled students and to interact with the KubeStellar community for either coding directly with our code base or community development, working on onboarding kinds of things or community growth and development initiatives. So I've developed a syllabus for the coding and community development and offered that to one of the universities. I'm also working on boilerplates and templates for a hackathon. The first one I think will happen between April 5th and 7th, working on that on a regular basis with one specific university to develop some challenges for code. Two that I have lined up and I'm open to others are something called the Binding Policy Creator. I had a version of this in Bash already. Takes dry run output from Helm and kubectl and creates a matching binding policy object definition. So as I said, I've already got this. It's just a matter of converting it to Go. And so I think it'd be good fodder for folks in the universities to get used to working in the open source with things like Git, use kind, Kubernetes, potential for these things to be first time working with those things for the first time. So can't really drop them in at the deep end of the pool. So I think these are kind of the high level. The intention is, and for the validator, this is also to check things like selectors for objects to make sure that WDS items are available, that the binding policies match them, that the controller manager for KubeStellar sees them and acknowledges them, and then makes manifest works for it or some kind of transport plugin object on its behalf, and eventually to the point at which it just shy of determining if the object's been created on the remote cluster. So those types of validations I think are important, or things that I wind up having to do on a regular basis here, either by running multiple console windows to monitor logs or monitor object creation, etc. So just to make sure that I'm getting proper feedback so that I know how to adjust my binding policies appropriately. So there's some interesting work that can be done there. I think that's a little bit more advanced than the creator, but just the same. I'm working with that specific university for developing a virtual machine which will house or contain most of the tools and implementations that we need for this event, and so that this should shorten the cycle for installing and getting things ready. So anyway, that's what I'm up to there. Any questions on interns for open source? Okay. KubeCon EU, I think Braulio, you're all set to go. I think Glar will be joining us there. You'll have a poster session on Wednesday evening during the Kube crawl. It's on digital architecture featuring KubeStellar. I've seen the poster, looking good so far. It's officially scheduled on the scheduling for KubeCon. For any of those watching the replay here and are going to be in Paris, we'd love to see you at the poster session for digital agriculture featuring KubeStellar. Please come and join us on Wednesday evening. Share a beer or a wine with us at the booth. Also, I'll be working at the Sandbox Project Pavilion booth for KubeStellar. We've been accepted. It runs on Wednesday. Also, it coincides with the Kube crawl, but it starts earlier than that in the afternoon, 3 p.m. In Central European time zone till 8. So join us there. Also, Donnie Rose will be joining us from the business development department for KubeStellar. And so that'll be great to see him there, and he'll get to interact with clients and customers firsthand. So I think that's great. Our lightning talk, we're still waitlisted. No updates there in terms of being able to give one or not. We'll see what happens. But of course, anything that we'd be talking about in the lightning talk would be good to use with clients in the Sandbox Project Pavilion as well. So we'll be developing content for that, regardless of if we'll be giving that talk or not. GitOpsCon, we've been waitlisted there, so no opportunity at the moment to book travel or be present there. So that's we'll still wait and see if we eventually turn that into an accepted talk. The talk was roughly around the multi-cloud computer and the use of KubeStellar to facilitate transfer of objects and statuses on its behalf. So that should be pretty cool if that takes place. We'll see. We'll cross our fingers and hope. No new polling in the community that I see. Does anybody know of any new polls in the community?
No, I don't think we had other polls because the discussion on the API renaming, etc. That was closed, right? There was pretty much everybody was in favor. Same for the renaming. So I don't think we had other major polls on that.
Yeah, I'm also seeing that people aren't too eager to open up new repos anymore. I told you there was a lot of overhead. Anyway, I don't see Nir on the call, so we can't give an update on pluggable transport or any opportunities there to discuss it. So I'll leave it be. So I'll open the floor for comments and questions. Does anybody have any topics or questions they have at the top of their mind that they'd like to discuss on this call?
Yeah, I was wondering, Andy, I mean, you've been working on looking how to use KFP and KubeStellar. I wonder if you have want to share anything about that work, right?
Yeah.
It's probably an interesting project for us, like KubeFlow, and we like to see if there is any possible way to somehow use some of the KubeStellar capabilities to run pipelines on remote clusters. That's pretty much it. That's what you have been looking.
Yeah, so thank you for the opportunity to talk. So I've been toying around with KubeFlow pipelines. This particular one is platform agnostic. So this is a Tecton version of KubeFlow. And this is installed on Kind with a KubeStellar hosted control plane and a KubeFlex backend. So there's two, actually, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Two clusters. One is for KubeFlex and KubeStellar, and the other is a remote cluster. So the idea here is that we'd like to have KubeFlow running on main KubeFlex KubeStellar cluster, and then be able to take either a pipeline run or a task within a pipeline run and transfer it to the remote cluster for its execution. So what I've been doing is working on trying to figure out a way to run the pipeline on an external remote cluster. But the first thing that you have to do is obviously you define a pipeline. So this is what a DAG looks like, or a I always get this name wrong. A diacyclical graph. I think I got the D wrong, but a cyclical graph. And I think that was created by the folks at Spark. They donated that to the open source. And so these are the steps in that specific workflow. You can see processes and compute, as well as input from external sources, and all in the idea of taking, let's say, a model and pre-processing it, applying guardrails to it, training it, and then outputting a model. So this is just a sample. This is the example that comes with KFP. I added this check suspend item here. So you can see in the check suspend, what it does is essentially looks for, this is the command that it runs. It's looking to see if something, some config map exists or not. And if it exists or does not exist, it will suspend the operation of this specific pipeline on the KubeStellar KubeFlex host, and will not run it there. It will instead run it on the remote, because it's been copied to the remote as a process of the synchronization that takes place in the background using KubeStellar's binding policies. So I can show you if essentially this is, so if we start the run here, you'll see it'll grab metadata and show that it's running. So it's checking out the suspension, should it suspend it locally or not. And then I don't have this part working yet when I'm working on it today. You'll see in just a second. I'll show you what the log looks like. So if this check completes correctly, and it has a status of succeeded, it will pass on to the pre-processing, training, and model creation. So you look in the check suspension, and of course it's not showing us logs. All right, let's see. All right, it's not showing logs today. It's having a bad day. Let's see.
I had the same problem with KFP. When I installed it, I couldn't see logs, and this was just on the client cluster.
Actually, I just got it back. Sorry. Here it is. So yeah, so here's the log running. So yeah, Paulo, it's the MLMD. If you're doing a proxy for kubectl, it won't work. If you do port forward, it does. Yeah, so try it with port forward.
I see.
So this is running the task and taking in, but I still haven't, I've got an issue in the code whereby the arguments that it takes for running the shell command, I check for, let's say, a config map or a namespace existing. The kubectl check for that returns back that it succeeded in running the kubectl command, but it doesn't tell you if it failed to find the object. So I tried that trick of ampersand out to dev null, and that didn't work either. So I've got a couple more ways that I think I can slice this onion, but the eventuality is I hope today to have this working such that it is suspending the operation of this particular pipeline, and that it will synchronize with the remote, run the pipeline remotely, and then come back and hopefully give a status. So we're doing this right. I'm doing this right now in Tecton. We want to also try and see if we can support Argo workflows. And so there's two different versions of KFP or KubeFlow pipelines, if you're not familiar with it. One that supports Tecton natively and is platform agnostic, and another that supports Argo workflows. And Argo workflows is just each one of these steps here runs inside of what KubeFlow calls an executor. Argo created their own executor, and so that Argo can show you details about the individual runs that are taking place here. So Argo's kind of inserted themselves into the pathway of these workflows and in a clever way, such that they can expose more details about how things are progressing. Lots of people have, looking at these blocks from their highest level, you can't really see, you can see pass or fail, but and of course digging into the logs, you might be able to see more than that, right? but it's not so much that you can bubble most of that to the surface, and Argo Workflows does a better job at that. So that's it. That's kind of the nuts and bolts of what I've been working on, aside from testing other aspects of KubeStellar. Any questions or comments here?
Yeah, thank you, Andy, for sharing. This looks really interesting.
Mhm.
And so have you considered also the option of somehow syncing directly pods, or you think that will be too much overhead rather than the whole pipeline for this?
Yeah, can you tell me what you? Oh, you mean the individual pods that are run
Right.
on the executor's behalf, the tasks?
Yes, right. Because I
Yeah.
think that the option is either we sync the whole pipeline, pipeline run like you're doing here,
Mm-hmm.
or we have a way to sync the individual pods, right?
Yeah.
Also, in that case, suspending pods would mean do something like putting a node selector so it doesn't actually run on the current cluster, and
Yeah.
then it will be sync and run on the other side, and then we sync back status, right? I don't know really which one of these two options will actually work better. I think one problem I've heard is that potentially pod that is executing may have some communication back with the controller, not through the Kube API. So that's something also that I'm not sure that could create trouble in potentially. So anyway,
Yeah, so something else that I bumped into that you might want to consider when thinking through that, and it's kind of deterred me from going down the individual task route. Let me see if I can show it to you here. So in the code for an individual pipeline, you'll see, you have these compute, you have executors that run the individual containers, and then you get, these kinds of things. So where is the input? It's input and output driven. Here you go. So it's expecting things like data sets, right? And parameters. And so parameters that are passed in, so you get input parameters that come into individual processes. You get artifacts that are coupled with that to be processed. And then you have output parameters. And then these output parameters, you'll see, are, then brought in as input. So you have artifacts and input parameters. So I don't know at this point, I'm skeptical whether or not we can get to the point where we have. I know what we do best, which is moving objects around. I don't know how the input and output specifications and especially the data sets would be available in those locations if we were to split that up at that level.
yeah,
Matter of fact, I'm still skeptical that the data sets will be available.
yeah,
Um,
because there is also
the input
some
output. Yeah.
data storage involved, right? For the pipeline, there is some state that is maintained in a data store, so that could be also.
Yeah, and you know how long it takes to spin up a PV or a PVC, right? So that's a lot of I think that adds to latency
Mhm.
running the job, is that the data is not available yet. That might be acceptable to some, but these data sets are awful large at times, right?
Mhm.
And depending on what's the size of the remote cluster, can it handle the size of that data set, right? So that gets to me, I think, while it's not the atomic level, right? The pipeline run is enough to kind of dip our toes in to determine what other issues lurk below it. And then I think the natural step or the next turn of the crank might be to look at individual tasks and how to split them apart. But I don't have any view into it just yet.
Mhm. Okay, so anyway, this is all exploration, explorative work, and we expect to have more findings, right? I guess the idea is to see also what features may be useful in KubeStellar to support this type of scenarios, and potentially even maybe suggesting some, I don't know, extension point to projects like KubeFlow pipelines, where maybe someone can plug their own kind of multi-cluster solution, like KubeStellar, I think, to do something like this.
Yeah, yeah. I'm seeing this in a bunch of different other places in the open source community. You've heard of the backstack. Have you heard of this yet?
Not yet.
Okay. This is Backstage, Argo,
Oh, yes, okay.
Crossplane, and Kyverno. And so the idea here is that, coupling those four together makes a kind of a consumable stack, a regularly consumable stack. And I don't think we haven't yet done it here. We did start it with multi-cloud computer, but there's still a lot of disagreement, I think, in the community as to how to couple these things together and who belongs in the stack and who doesn't. But provided, I think that's a natural outcome of the work that we're doing here is, creating these stacks, whether they be statically defined like a backstack or dynamically defined as others would like it to look like, right? So that's some of the exploration I've been doing on the side is something I'm calling stacker.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Right? The idea is to give sort of built-in solution that already has pretty much all the set of components people usually use in their workflow, and give you already something you can start using without really having to figure out how to put all these things together. Right? That's, I guess, is the main goal.
Yeah, you create a platform based on other platforms. It's just the natural next step. If I'm looking on, so this is what I'm calling it: stars, galaxies, and universes. So stars are individual projects that can be installed with Helm or Git, and they can also be, underneath. They can use customize. And you give it source information as well as version information, and of course a label. In the case of the WEX, you can give them individual labels so that they'll be applied. That's a galaxy with stars. So a galaxy with stars would be the equivalent of your stack. And a universe is how should that galaxy be applied? And so you have a core, a host of WDS, and some WEX, and you have the login information accordingly, and then any information on secrets you might want to impart here, how they're being referenced. And so this would be the universe. I also have, for the validation end of things, something called campaigns and missions. So missions would be looking at the individual. So that's in the galaxy right now. So looking at what should be deployed on the remote. So these are individual objects and namespaces that need to exist in order for there to be a valid deployment. You can see here I've got a validation that failed on certain ones, but succeeded on others. So, to check and validate that these things have been deployed. So you've got, these would be considered campaigns, and these would, I'm sorry, this would be a campaign, all of these collected, and these would be individual missions, who to check and what to look for.
Yeah, thank you. This looks an interesting tool for people, especially I like the validation part that at the end, if you have everything you're supposed to deliver to every cluster, right?
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the biggest dilemmas that I face on a day-to-day basis is trusting that the work that I did to match the objects that I want to be delivered, as well as the place where they need to go, and understanding if they've made it to that point and are operational. And I think that's probably the biggest disconnect right now in working in a remote sense, is not knowing if the clusters are configured properly and operating as you expect them to be. So yeah, I think it's a big part of what we do. But thanks for the question. Yeah, go ahead, Braulio.
So the comment that you just made, I think, so is the validation tool that we are working with Francois and the team is that only trying to address this this concern that you just highlight.
Yeah, I think it's called chainsaw from Kyverno, correct? Yeah.
Yes, we are using chainsaw. Yes.
Yeah. So if that can do all the heavy lifting for campaigns and missions, that would be fantastic. Would love to see it mature into that. Yeah.
Yeah. Next week, I'm planning. Francois and I are gonna sync up with you and show the status. Yes, we address some concern that you just highlight here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of the code that I've been writing lately, and I've said this about KubeStellar in the past, right? So you may chuckle at this, but I'd like to see a lot of it go away, right? Like I'm installing a lot of things by hand right now for KubeStellar and KubeFlex. That should all be done by Helm chart. And I think that's coming. We'll get to that point. And there's other things that, copying annotations or copying objects and secrets around and, kube configs, right? How are those being passed through the KubeStellar universe? So there's all kinds of little utilities, if you will, that eventually could take their place as proper code in main or in a version of KubeStellar to support the overall distribution here. I think Stacker is orchestrating the delivery of all these packages, these stars in these universes, stars in the galaxies against universes. I think that's probably a separate charter, but there are lots of facilities that I use in code that I've had to create from scratch, right, based on Kube API that are necessary for copying objects from the host from the remote to the host, right, to make sure to remote to the hub to make sure that you've got ample information about something that's operating on the remote, but you need that information at the hub to make some kind of connection. This is big in Prometheus. There's also, customization, right? I'm doing some of that right now in source control. We had that in 0.14. We'll have it again someday. That's making things a little bit more complicated than they need to be right now. So I'm hoping a lot of this stuff gets peeled off and incorporated into the project properly. And then Stacker maybe can exist as a layer above that, more as an orchestration, and placement utility. That's the hope. Anyway, well, thanks for the question, Paulo. I appreciate it. It's not often that I get to promote my own work, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions or comments here? Or we can, any other things that we'd like to talk about? All right, folks, that'll do it for us for this week. We'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. And I hope to hear and see from you all. And enjoy the rest of your week here. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.